Hello, Be Smart viewers. Welcome back to another engaging episode of Manager's Mantra, where we connect with industry leaders who are shaping the future of business management. Today, we have with us Ankur Gupta, Senior Staff Technical Program Manager, LinkedIn. With over 15 years of experience in AI infrastructure, cloud platforms, and large scale distributed systems, he led high impact programs spanning AI ML deployment and capacity planning at companies like LinkedIn and Walmart. Ankur specializes in turning complex technical challenges into scalable platforms that deliver measurable business outcomes. So, without waiting further, let's jump right into this insightful discussion. Hi Ankur, a very good morning and welcome to this new session of Managers Mantra. We are glad to have you today with us, and I'm sure this will be a wonderful session, and the viewers will just love watching this session.
Thank you, Abhishek. I really appreciate the opportunity and excited to be part of the show.
Sure. Ankur, you have been a part of different companies before LinkedIn. You have worked in Walmart, Global Tech, Infosys. You have seen how companies have, went for cloud adoption. And now, after years of aggressive cloud adoption, they are now focused on cost optimization and, return on investment. So, what's changing in the enterprise cloud strategy today?
So I think the era of lift and shift everything to cloud is essentially over. For the past decade or so, moving to the cloud was supposed to automatically make you faster, be cheaper, and for many companies, to be honest, it did. But now I think there is a healthy correction that is coming where organizations are stepping back and asking, hey, did we actually get in return what we expected? And I think the biggest shift that is happening in cloud adoption is cloud optimization, where many enterprises are moving workloads without rethinking their design. So they took on premise architecture, put them on cloud, on virtual machines, and basically ended up paying more money for the same infrastructure. Their cloud bill has become one of the largest IT line in their finance teams have started asking the hard questions. So, what's changing? First, I think the organizations are getting serious about measuring what they actually need versus what they are paying for. In my experience, we replaced, like in one of the programs, a manual spreadsheet based capacity planning process where every team was padding how much they were estimating, and it was impossible to accurately tie the capacity growth back to business growth with data driven forecasting tied to business metric. And what we noticed is this system, when we built it, it helped us make informed decisions that helped reduce the infrastructure forecasting cost, to be honest, by $300 million dollars in one cycle and another cycle, $400 million dollars. Not by cutting any capability, but actually replacing the guesswork with data. That principle applies directly to cloud optimization that the companies are doing. So basically, the conversation has moved from cloud versus on-prem to basically right workload and right environment. Not every workload belongs in cloud. Companies have learned that. Some may be latency sensitive, non-elastic, or high throughput workloads are more cost effective on dedicated on-prem infrastructure. And I think smart organizations are making these decisions based on economics and performance and data. They are moving away from like, let's move everything to cloud and that particular ideology. And what I've noticed in my recent interactions over a couple years, the finance sector of the company has matured, and they're moving away from the buzzword to the real discipline. And the best companies that are treating cloud cost management like another business function, and they're tracking it to the point, and that have dedicated team, they have clear metrics and accountability, those are the winners, and not the ones spending the most on it. They are the ones with the clearest visibility and into like what they are spending and why they are spending.
Thank you, Ankur. Ankur, with increasing automation in development and operations, program management, how should MBA graduates interpret the future of managerial roles, therefore?
Hmm. I think what I feel there is a lot of anxiety in this space with all the AI craze and all the new things and the tooling and all of that is coming in. So far, I have not seen automation eliminating managerial roles, but I have seen that it is reshaping them for sure. And honestly, I think it's for the better. What automation does well is basically it removes any repetitive operational work. Automated deployments, automated monitoring, incident triage, these used to consume like enormous amount of human time. And in large scale reliability programs that I have led, automation detection response freed up people time to focus on higher value like work. It did not eliminate those people, but basically it helped them understand pattern and drive systematic improvement. So we were able to refocus the resources towards other engineering problems. So basically, the people were not replaced, the work became more meaningful. And I think for MBA graduates, the opportunity I believe is expanding as technology becomes more complex with AI, cloud, data platforms, and infrastructure. They're all converging, if you see. The need for people who can operate at the intersection of all those technology and the business. I think that's the gold mine. The people, it will help people grow if you are an expert in these fields. These are the people I believe who can translate with technical teams, but at the same time, they can talk to business. And these are the people who can look at like complex programs that have like dozens of dependencies and they are able to figure out a critical path. These are the people I think who drive the organizational change, not just a technical change. And I think the key shift that you cannot lead what you don't understand. I feel here like you don't need to write code, but you do need to understand how these systems work and what their trade-offs are and how to ask the right question if you are leading one of these programs. The most effective leaders I have worked with are those who can look at a dashboard, they can understand those metrics, they can have informed decisions and the conversations with the engineers about the priorities, how we want to lead. So I would say to anyone watching, like, do not fear the automation, embrace it like it's a tool that removes any low value grunt work from your plate. But definitely, you need to invest in building enough technical knowledge and fluency to be a like credible partner to the engineering teams that you are going to work with in future. So I think the future belongs to the leaders who can bridge technology and business outcomes together with their capabilities and skills.
Thank you so much, Ankur. Ankur, today, we cannot deny the role, the rising and the increasing role of data. Data is so important today. And, data platforms are becoming the backbone of organizations. But then what separates, companies that successfully build these platforms from those who fail?
I think this field I've spent like quite a considerable amount of time working on data platforms. So I think the most important thing just to understand from the beginning is there is no single data platforms. Organizations basically need to fundamentally differentiate different type depending on the business requirement. Like getting this architecture choice right in the beginning is what separates companies that succeed versus like those who build expensive infrastructure that nobody is using. And you might make a wrong architectural decision in the beginning, but you need to be fast and nimble enough to operate and move on and change your course. So at a high level, there are basically three type of platforms. You have offline platforms that handle the batch processing, like analytics, model training, where the latency is usually in hours or longer. Um, Online platforms are basically that serve the real-time request. These are in millisecond latency, like when a user sees instant recommendation, or a nearline platform basically that sits in between the offline and online. The processing of data is in seconds to minutes, which is usually for the use cases like fraud detection, content ranking, where freshness matters, but instant response is not required. The companies, I would say, that fail to understand and make one of two mistakes, like either they try to build one platform, hey, to save cost or for XYZ reasons, like let me build one platform that can do everything, which results in something that does nothing overall. Or they like build wrong type of use case, like trying to serve real-time recommendation from a batch processing system. I've seen both, and the cost wasted and the engineering hour wasted and the missed business opportunity cost is significant. What separates successful organizations, I would say, they always start with asking the business need and not the technology. Like they don't hear the buzzword, oh, Kafka is there, oh, Hadoop is there. They understand the business need, and before choosing between offline, nearline, offline, they ask like what decision needs to be made with this data, how fresh the data needs to be, what latency can it tolerate. So those answers that determine the architecture, not the technology trend. And they also invest in making standard path easy when building the right data pipeline requiring, like that requires filing ticket. And like when building the right data pipeline, you don't want your teams to, for your platform to require like filing tickets and waiting for weeks, or teams go rogue building their own thing. The best platform organization, I would say, they make their platform self-service, so straightforward that nobody wants to deviate, and they just love loving using your platform. And another thing I would say here is like, mm, your platform will succeed and see green signals everywhere when you treat it as a product. So it's not just like for internal customer, you need to have the same product mindset when working on internal platforms, such as data platforms that you have.
So, Ankur, many leaders today claim to be, data driven. Now, what does that actually mean, and what does it actually look like in day-to-day decision making?
So I I think I've seen many organizations that call themselves data driven, but what's the right here? Maybe they are more data decorated. They make decisions based on intuition, authority, and then they find data somehow to support those decisions. But I believe like true data driven decision making looks very different. First, it starts with defining the right metrics before you even begin, or not afterwards. When in my one of my programs, when we standardize like survey level operation SLOs across roughly 1,400 production services, defining metrics upfront fundamentally changed how the teams operated. Instead of debating whether a system is good enough based on feelings, or like we always had a clear quantitative answer. That that clarity eliminated, I would say, enormous unproductive debates, and it let team focus on the real improvement. Second, I think I would say, we need to also focus on making data accessible and understandable, not just like available. Um, you would see often that companies have dashboards, but like let's say only three people look at them. What you want is data that like a product manager, a finance leader, or maybe an engineering director, they all can look and draw conclusions from. The most impactful thing here, I would say, is translating the technical metrics into business language. So, in one of my programs where we managed the capacity of our system and created a forecasting platform, instead of asking business teams like, hey, what's your CPU utilization across cluster, we asked them, would you be interested in seeing cost per million queries, or how much capacity runway you will have in weeks? So this is easy for them to wrap their head around. That kind of translation, I would say, it makes data actionable with much wider audience, because not everybody is understand the technical jargons and the CPUs and the memory and how their business ties to them. So you also need to be like willing to let the data change your mind, and that's where I think true leadership comes in. This is the hardest part. And in genuinely data driven culture, the data wins regardless of who is sitting at the top, like who proposed the alternative. People in true data driven culture, I have seen, anyone can push back if they have the right data and their opinions will be respected. That's the discipline. It what separates, I would say, a real data driven organization from what those that are performing like a theater of it, I would say.
Interesting insights, Ankur. Ankur, you have walked in across India and the US ecosystem. Now, how do you compare talent readiness and leadership maturity in both the markets?
So I think this one is close to my heart. Having built my career across both India and in US, I think the honest answer is more nuanced than the usual narrative that we see. India, I think, has extraordinary deep talent pool, particularly in engineering. The quality of the top end is world class. What I have observed is like significant maturation over decades. It has shifted from primarily like execution focused work into building specification uh, to genuine innovation and ownership. Today, if you see, there is a lot of innovation happening across India, and some of the most complex, even in my programs, I've noticed distributed systems, AI platforms, data infrastructure are being designed by teams in India. They're not just like implemented by them, they're designing them, they are building them, and they are equal partners with US counterpart. Where I would say US economy has a still has an edge is like that, and that also is changing rapidly, to be honest, is in the system thinking at scale. Like the ability to look at a problem holistically, considering business implication, organizational dynamics, like long-term architecture together, and this is even this is not like inherent capability difference. This is like um, experience difference that is slowly evolving. Like US tech companies have operative at massive scales for longer, I would say, and it has built into the backbone, and that shows up all across in the leadership approach. I would say like the biggest opportunity for India is like building more cross-functional leadership, the ability to operate at like the intersection of technology, product, and business, be more open-minded and be more bold in coming up with the ideas and pursuing them, to build your own startup, your own companies, and be ready to fail fast and stand up again and try again. And India's MBA programs and tech companies are investing heavily there also, I would say. And the results are showing. One thing like I would definitely say is the era of thinking, hey, India is a low cost executioner center. Let's ship some work over there so teams at offshore can do this. I think that era is over. The companies that still think that way are missing out on the extraordinary talent pool. The smart ones, the smart companies are building their own genuine centers of excellence uh, in India, in different cities all across India, that have clear full ownership, and they are not just doing the tasks of what the headquarter is telling them, but they are owning and building the platforms with a real dependency, real outcome, and real financial decision making.
Wonderful, Ankur. Thank you so much. So, many large companies are still operating on the legacy systems like SAP. And now, how can these businesses modernize without disrupting core operations?
So I think this is one of the hardest problem in enterprise technology. See, the temptation is always let's do a big bang migration, like rip out the old and replace it with some latest. And almost every time I have seen that is attempted at a scale, it either fails or it costs like three times or maybe four times the budget. What I've seen is the approach that usually works is incremental modernization. Think of it like renovating your house where people are still living in it. You won't like tear down the house on day one and it's like, hey, everybody go out, let's rebuild the house. If people are still living, you work room by room. You make small renovations. You make sure every section is still livable without before you move to, the next one. So in practice, I would say the companies should start with interfaces, not the core. Like they should build modern APIs, data layer on top of like legacy system. Once your new applications can talk like cleanly with the modern interfaces and the core is still running without reliability issues, and over a period of time you can replace underlying components one by one, because the rest of the organization is only seeing the interface in the front. They're not seeing the what's behind it. So then it is much simpler and easier for you to do. And I think second principle, and being honest here, I have worked in SAP on SAP products for 5 years, and being honest about like what actually needs to change. I would say not everything in SAP is legacy, or even in legacy is bad. SAP has encoded like decades of business process knowledge, which is like genuinely valuable. So companies should focus on what is actually limiting them, not just like SAP sounds old and it's slowing us down. So they need to understand the real reasons. Maybe like, do you have slow deployment cycles? Do you have inability to scale? Is it like not elastic in nature? Or like, do you have poor data accessibility? The UI is not great, or the maintenance cost, maybe that's too high. So you need to target those pain points, and then yes, then you make a rational decision as a leader that, hey, do I continue to invest in SAP, or do I try to rebuild something, or do I take a third party tool and try to integrate into my company? So all those are valid options at that point. So the successful programs that I have been part of, like they all always had those measurable objective. So once you focus on the objectives, then the technology is just like a supporting factor. You need to adjust the technology accordingly, and then the success also, chances of success of your program also increase, because you're doing a fundamental change with the valid reasoning behind it. So the teams who are eventually going to implement this, they can rally themselves behind the goal, because they understand it. They understand the real business value, they understand the reasoning. So it overall makes the chances of success of these kind of initiatives much, much more.
Uh, Now that we have, started talking about modernization, no discussions are complete without discussing artificial intelligence today. That's the need of the hour today, and that's the topic of the hour today. But then there is a surge in the AI infrastructure costs. So now, how are leading companies rethinking their AI strategies to kind of improve the return of investment? And at the same time, they also have to think about not compromising performance and innovations. How do they do it? How do young leaders do it?
I think GPU costs are like the single biggest infrastructure challenge today in AI, maybe other than energy. Energy is another cost. You can almost see all the CEOs across the world, they are uh, bounded by energy. And of course, then the cost is uh, another factor that is baking very heavily. So for large enterprises, just serving AI models in production, to be honest, can cost like hundreds of $1 million in annual budget, and the demand keeps growing. Why? Because AI gets embedded into more and more products. So right now maybe like 20 products are using AI, and you will see soon enough all the products in your company will have that AI embedded into them one way or another. So this is not about like trimming budgets, but how do we build something sustainable, like from the cost perspective, but can still serve the AI at scale to your customers. Uh, from my experience, and the most overlooked or like harder to achieve problem, I would say, is fungibility. So how would you make your GPU fleet like interchangeable across different teams, across different workload types? In most organizations, even in the large organizations, and even today, even in the mature organizations, GPUs are usually statically allocated. Like team A, you have 200 GPUs, team B, you have 300 GPUs. And at any time, a significant chunk is sitting idle because it is provisioned for the burst capacity. It is not every day you're seeing that ramp or you're not seeing that much traffic. So it is getting wasted in a way. It is just sitting around waiting for traffic to come or waiting for a ramp to happen. If you can make those GPUs fungible, what it means is somebody else can use it while you are not using it. Pooled, dynamically allocatable, based on the real time demand. The utilization can dramatically go up without even need to buy a single new machine. It sounds simple, but trust me, it is a technical challenge for sure, but organizational challenge as well. To make these GPU truly fungible across different model types, different frameworks, different team boundaries, it's substantial, I would say. The companies, I would say, that are able to solve this problem can effectively save 30 to 40%, I would say, to like run the same workload on the same fleet. Another lever I think we can think of is architecture optimization, like how and what model are we running, where are we running. For example, most organizations, I would say, they deploy monolithic models. The entire model will sit on your GPU, but and it will run on it. But in modern AI models, they have different components, like very different profiles with different profile. Like some are memory heavy, some are compute heavy. So by disaggregating those components that are running each piece, uh, you can unlock some significant gains. In actually one of my programs, we are re-architecting similar problem statement like serving layer uh, for one of the major advertising model that, and we went from like 90 QPS to 400 QPS. That's like 4.4x improvement on the same hardware, and it roughly equated to like $20 million in capital saving. And surprisingly, even though we reduced the amount of hardware we need, our business metrics went up. We achieved a click-through rate of 17% as compared to 6% that was planned. And another thing teams need to look at is right sizing, right? Not every GPU or not every workload that you have need the latest generation of H100, H200 from NVIDIA or any other latest and greatest stack, right? You need to figure out what kind of model you have. Um, recommendation model that can run fine on last generation hardware doesn't automatically need an upgrade. So as an organization, you need to be smart about it. Like you need to maintain a heterogeneous fleet and try to match the workload with the right tier of hardware. That will like save you some amount. And these cost savings, they compound, right? You can slowly like think about one model saving, in my example, one architecture decision saving 20 million. If you can make several architecture similar decisions, how much money saving you can have. So I would say finally, like efficiency and innovation velocity are not like in the tension. When your infrastructure is more efficient, the same budget funds will fund more experiments. So your finance will also be more comfortable, giving you money to be able to move faster, find more solutions. So those are the ones like I think extracting the most value from every GPU that they have.
Thank you so much, Ankur. Ankur, how can non-technical MBA graduates, create high-impact roles in tech-driven organizations? Because we have many MBAs aspiring to be in tech-driven companies, and these are global giants. So, but then how can they learn to create, the high-impact roles in such organizations?
So I think I would like to challenge is here slightly. Some of the most impactful people I have worked with in technology, they don't write code. They drive outcomes through a different set of capabilities. And those capabilities are in enormous demand. The first area I would say is a program and portfolio management. I'm an expert in the same field. Like if you are working in any large scale technology company or working on some large scale transformation, the bottleneck is rarely the code or the technology. Like we have plenty of technical talent who can handle that. The real challenge you will always see is the coordination, getting hundreds of teams aligned on common goals, like driving accountability without any, bureaucracy, managing dependency across interconnected systems. These all require like exceptional organizational skill, communication skill, and ability. And in our TPM terms, we call it like influence without authority. They don't report to you, but you still need to influence them to be part of your goal. And I think all of these are classic MBA strengths. Um, Second, I would say product managers for internal program. That's another area that MBAs can think of. Every large tech company has internal tools, data platforms, infrastructure services, right? They all need product thinking. And I think I said this earlier in the interview as well, right? Treat your internal platforms also like your external products. You need to understand your user need, prioritize the feature, measuring adoption. And MBA graduates, I think, who can think like product manager, but for infrastructure, they will always have outsized impact because they will focus on teams solving the right problem, not just like, I have a platform, I need to keep building more features. They need to tie the business user demand with the feature that you are building. So my one piece of advice would here like might be right, invest in the technical literacy, maybe not in the expertise. So you don't need to write code, you don't need to build models, you don't need to build systems, right? But if you are sitting in a meeting room where technical leaders, engineers, architects, they're discussing something, how can you contribute in that room, right? Are you even understanding what they're talking about? Are you following what they are saying, right? Can you bring something to the table that can help uh, uplift their thinking process? So you have to understand the concepts at a conceptual level, how these systems work, right? What the trade-offs are, how these systems interact with each other. I think that piece is definitely important. So that kind of understanding will earn you a seat in that room, right, on that table. And from that kind of understanding, plus the leadership skills, remember, right, as an MBA, you're bringing those leadership skills, you will be able to bring influence, and you will be able to influence without authority over these teams, right? You can set the rhythm, and people, believe me, right, people will look up to you for giving them a good leadership direction. And but you need to be technically uh, literate to be able to bring that kind of trust within you, from you, right? So I think even though non-technical MBA graduates can land in these roles, they need to be technically savvy to be able to understand the technology and the interactions of the systems. They not need to necessarily learn the coding and how to build a model to still be successful in their jobs.
Thank you so much, Ankur. So, with that question, we come to the end of this discussion. Thank you again for taking out your time and participating in this session. We definitely look forward to staying in touch with you and having you again in any of our future sessions. Thank you so much, Ankur.
Thank you, Abhishek. The pleasure is all mine.
That's a wrap on this episode of Manager's Mantra. Thank you, Ankur, for sharing your insights on AI infrastructure, cloud platforms, and providing career suggestions for management students. BSmart viewers, we hope you found this conversation helpful. Share your thoughts with us at bsmart.edit@bsml.in. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram for more such insightful and inspiring content. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.